Jake is on duty as a receptionist at the storage facility Warehouse 24 when a loud bang startles the employees and a violent tremor shakes the building. Soon, the bosses appear asking if anyone knows what that was, as earthquakes are not common in London. A plume of smoke rises from a neighboring building and someone says it must have been a bomb. The mystery is solved when a supervisor goes out to check his car and sees it was hit by a plane turbine. In the warehouse, the sliding doors begin to close by themselves and the boss looks at her employees, expecting an explanation that doesn't come. Nearby, Lucy is walking her dog when she sees other pieces of the plane scattered around. Trying to call someone to find out what happened, she is almost run over by a convoy of armored vehicles speeding past her. The dog breaks free from the leash and runs to a large empty and open container. Lucy sees that the interior is all dirty with a white slime, but before she can investigate further, her dog runs away again. She finds him petrified, staring at a dark area, until he starts barking again and runs in that direction. Lacking the courage to follow him, Lucy is terrified by the sound of hissing followed by painful whimpers. Meanwhile, in the neighboring area, Charlie is stuck in traffic with his friend Mark. He is depressed about the breakup and can't stop talking about his ex-partner, Shelley. Already losing patience with the drama, the friend turns up the radio to hear the news about the military plane that crashed in central London. There aren't many details yet, but it is believed the plane was carrying something potentially dangerous. As the wreckage is scattered all over the region, a quarantine zone has been established in the central area. Hours later, Charlie finally arrives at Warehouse 24 to pick up his belongings after the recent separation. Mark can't believe it when he sees Shelley's car, knowing that it will create a scene. The exits of the warehouse are still blocked due to a system failure and a technician named Bob is trying to fix the problem. He manages to open one of the doors with a handheld tool, allowing the two friends to enter and the boss to exit. But the solution is temporary, and the metal door automatically closes again. Bob tells Jake that he needs to adjust the emergency system, otherwise, this will last all night and he'll have to disable the lockdown manually every time someone wants to pass through. The receptionist takes Bob to the basement where he sees that the cover of a ventilation duct is broken, but he doesn't think much of it. Hearing suspicious noises, he loudly asks if anyone else is there, but there's no response. Still suspicious, he begins to move toward the dark area, turning on one lamp at a time. Jake suddenly appears, startling the technician. He shows him where the circuit breaker is and leaves, but pauses on the stairs after hearing a strange sound, as if the technician dropped a tool. As nothing else happens, the guy decides to brush it off and goes back to the reception. On the third floor, Shelley is sorting her things with the help of a couple of friends, Nikki and Chris, when her ex-partner arrives in a bad mood, throwing jabs. Trying to be delicate, Shelley says she had left a message saying she would come at that time, precisely to avoid this embarrassment. She asks what he wants, and Charlie says he wants to know why she left him. Shelley explains she was asking which items he wants to take. Mark is almost dying of second-hand embarrassment when the lights suddenly go out. In the reception, Jake starts grumbling that he hates this job and goes to check what Bob is up to in the basement. He finds the technician sitting on the stairs, playing with a lighter in the dark. Going down a few more steps, Jake swears when he realizes Bob has been attacked, and then he encounters a horrendous creature. Trembling in fear, Jake climbs the stairs and holds the door shut. The thing begins to slam against the door with incredible force, making several holes quickly. Realizing he won't be able to hold it, Jake abandons the door and runs away. In the third-floor cabin, the atmosphere remains awful, and Charlie becomes increasingly annoying with his ex. As there's no light to see their belongings, Mark convinces him to leave and let Shelley be with her friends. As soon as the light comes back, Chris starts complaining that he is hungry and that this is all taking too long, but his girlfriend warns that she won't leave her friend hanging. Shelley mentions there's a snack machine downstairs, and Nikki decides to go with him. Meanwhile, Charlie and Mark are trying to exit the warehouse, but no one responds when they call, and even the phone isn't working. Mark feels calmer seeing that the technician's van is still outside. He tries to call the number written on the side, but discovers that he also has no signal on his cell phone. When he asks Charlie to try, his friend replies that Shelley broke up with him over the phone and that's why his cell is at the bottom of the river right now. Growing increasingly agitated with the situation, he tries to break the glass with a fire extinguisher but only creates a crack. Besides that, there's a metal door outside, and even if the glass shattered, it wouldn't help at all. On the first floor, Chris starts mocking Charlie's predicament, and Nikki tries not to laugh. Seeing that the women's bathroom is closed, she asks her boyfriend to watch the door while she uses the men's. Once she is seated, a shadow passes across the floor, as if someone else is there. Chris opens the door for a moment to hurry her up but closes it again before she can ask if he saw anyone enter. Nikki gets scared by another power outage, but when the lights come back, no one is in the bathroom. She only realizes something happened to the ceiling when she sees white slime dripping. Then Chris hears a scream and runs through the corridors to investigate, just as the lights go out again. Spotting an open door, he uses his phone flashlight to search inside and almost dies of fright at the stacked mannequins. The shock is even greater when one of the faces talks to him, but then Chris realizes it's just Jake. Which isn't much of a relief, as the receptionist is obviously petrified with terror. He starts repeating that they need to flee before the thing gets there. Chris barely has time to react to the warning, as Jake's face is suddenly grabbed by a huge monstrous hand and the guy is pulled up right afterward. 2 floors above, Shelley is surprised to see Mark and her ex-partner returning. Mark explains they're looking for Jake because they can't get out. Charlie starts signaling to his friend, wanting him to leave them alone, but Shelley catches on to the code first and becomes irritated by the insistence. Charlie asks her to at least say what he did wrong, and she replies there's nothing. She just doesn't love him anymore, and he needs to accept that. She storms off, very nervous, and Mark says he will talk to her. Only then do we discover what is really happening: the two are having an affair. Mark wants her to tell the ex, but she fears it will destroy him. It is evident that Mark doesn't care at all about Charlie, who is just a few meters away thinking they are just talking. Nikki arrives asking for Chris, and Charlie says he hasn't seen him, explaining that he came back because the warehouse is all locked down and there's no way out. At that moment, an animalistic scream echoes through the building. Mark tells Shelley to wait where she is while he checks it out. Coming face to face with the others, he tries to disguise it when his friend asks where Shelley is, but she decides to leave while she is still getting dressed. The understanding hits Charlie like a punch, and he decides that Mark deserves the same thing. Shelley separates the two and tries to explain herself, but her ex is inconsolable. Taking the matches he borrowed from his friend out of his pocket, he sees they are courtesy of a motel and realizes he has been betrayed for a long time. Shelley admits that she made up all of her work trips and apologizes, but Charlie just walks away so he doesn't cry in front of them. Disappointed with her friend, Nikki goes after him to offer her support. Passing by the mannequin cabin, she says she heard something, and the two decide to take a look inside. Chris is sitting in the corner, looking catatonic, as if in shock. Charlie thinks he's joking, but Nikki becomes worried and gets closer, asking what happened. When he moves, she realizes he is hurt and starts to clean his face, but soon a new drop falls in the same spot. The ominous leak is coming from the ceiling, and Charlie takes Chris's phone to find out where it's coming from. Pulling off one of the panels, he lights up the area around and says there's nothing wrong. However, as soon as he finishes the sentence, Jake appears right beside him, all battered and barely able to speak. Charlie even falls off the chair from the fright, and Nikki leaves the cabin to take a breath. Passing through the hallway, Mark and Shelley notice his distress and enter the cabin too. Charlie says he just saw what's left of the receptionist and Chris starts mumbling that they are all doomed. As if all this wasn't strange enough, a man in pajamas appears in the hallway drooling toothpaste and grabs Nikki. The friends immediately rush to help her, and Shelley knocks him out. Traumatized by the series of scares, Nikki thinks they should take care of this man right now, sure that he must be the one responsible for everything. Only then do they realize the stranger was armed with nothing more than a toothbrush. The group decides to tie him up while they figure out what to do. Coming to his senses, the man starts a paranoid rant. His name is David, and he seems to suspect that they are all working for his wife, named Mary. Nikki starts to realize that he isn't quite right in the head but isn't exactly a criminal. Obsessed with the division of goods, David has been living in a cabin at Warehouse 24 since his divorce, to escape Mary's lawyers. During the interrogation, a hissing sound crosses the building, as if something is lurking in the ventilation ducts. Charlie tells Nikki to close the cabin door, and she obeys, very scared. The sound suddenly stops, but the lights go out right after, and something starts banging on the door with great force. Chris begins to freak out, repeatedly insisting that the thing is going to get everyone. When the door is ripped off, he bolts from the cabin and darts down the corridors while the gigantic creature chases him. Chris tries to hide but is soon found and comes face to face with the monster. The thing presses against him as if trying to hear his heartbeat and then decides to rip it out mercilessly. Meanwhile, David reveals something useful to the group and says that his cabin is the only one that locks from the inside. He made sure to arrange it this way for the case when Mary discovers where he is. They then move to the 4th floor, and David starts fumbling with the keys. As threatening sounds intensify throughout the building, the others become annoyed with the delay, and the pressure makes David even more nervous. He only manages to unlock the door when the creature has already found them, barely missing entering with them. Now that they are temporarily safe, they start to deal with the incredible facts they have witnessed. One of the walls in the cabin is covered with TVs, and David says he has been following the news closely since the plane crash. As the others were focused on their own drama, in addition to being isolated in the warehouse, no one had realized the gravity of the situation. Authorities have blocked access to central London and even sent tanks to deal with a possible threat, but no one says exactly what it is. David bets that the creature is an extraterrestrial that was being transported by the crashed plane, and that's why the accident is being treated this way. The government still doesn't know where the alien ended up, which would explain all these security measures. Mark asks the others why they are listening to a guy living in a storage unit, but his disdain doesn't work very well after everyone has seen the alien with their own eyes. Charlie says that the important thing now is to get out of there as quickly as possible. Remembering how he himself got into the building, he says that the technician had a device to deactivate the lockdown for a few moments. David, who knows the building better, says that he must have gone to the basement to make repairs. If they could find the technician or at least his belongings, they could open the metal doors and escape. However, there is still a big problem with this plan, as the basement is 5 floors below them, increasing the chances of a very unpleasant encounter. There's no way to get from one floor to another through the ventilation system, and unfortunately, David isn't the type of eccentric person who collects weapons. But his neighbors might be. And fortunately, he's also not the type who respects other people's property. One of his advantages as a resident is precisely access to the contents of the other units through the air duct. Following his instructions, Charlie is the first to venture, and Mark enters right behind him. The silence begins to become awkward after several minutes crawling together, and Mark begins to talk about the love triangle, trying to explain his attitude. Charlie cuts the conversation immediately and says he is only putting up with his company as long as it's necessary for survival. Back in silence, the two reach one of the larger cabins and start rummaging through all the boxes. They repeat the process in every unit they can invade, finding plenty of strange things but nothing of great use. In the end, their efforts yield a few knives, walkie-talkies, fireworks, and a crowbar. On the way back, it's Mark who goes ahead. The two stop moving when the hissing sounds pass nearby, but soon continue when the noise ends. Suddenly, the creature starts pounding the walls of the duct, right where Charlie is. The two try to hurry, but the thing easily catches up to them until it seems to give up. Moving to the upper duct, Mark asks Charlie to hand him the bag with the stuff they gathered. When it's Charlie's turn to be pulled up, the attack begins again, right in front of him. The wall of the duct is already tearing, and a gigantic finger starts to emerge. Mark decides to save himself while there's still time and leaves Charlie behind. Arriving at David's dwelling, he says he did everything to save his friend but couldn't stop the monstrous foe. While the four prepare for the journey to the basement, we see that Charlie actually escaped. Coming out in a random cabin, he still tries to check some boxes but sees they are all filled with toys. Some noises coming from inside the tunnel worry him, and afraid of being trapped in that cabin, he breaks down the door to get out. The creature is already waiting for him in the hallway. With no serious options left, Charlie resorts to what he has in hand and offers a stuffed animal. Surprised by the innovative defense, the monster rejects the gift with a single blow, sending the teddy bear's head flying. In the commotion, a noisy little dog is activated, and its peculiar behavior confuses the monster greatly. Charlie takes advantage of the opening to escape and runs aimlessly until he bumps into Mark. The others are shocked to see that Charlie is alive, and Shelley shoots an indignant glance at the new boyfriend. With no time for resentments, Charlie warns that the thing is coming. They try to run downstairs, but the confrontation is inevitable. Ahead of the group, David says he knows what he is doing and tells the others to run away. His plan is basically to insult the alien, compare it to Mary, and even bite it. David knows that none of this will save him, but since he has decided to sacrifice himself, he prefers to do it with style. David is attacked in the face and then has his head crushed. Thanks to this heroic gesture, the others manage to reach the basement. Charlie splits the group into two pairs, choosing to stay with Nikki. The basement is completely dark, and as the pairs slowly advance, we see that the alien is quietly huddled in a corner, waiting for its chance. Charlie and Nikki find what remains of Bob and hold back their disgust to search for the device. The technician comes back to life one last time just to scare Charlie, but at least he finds what he wanted, and the two return to the ground floor. Mark is waiting alone and says the creature took Shelley. Charlie becomes desperate and refuses to leave without her, punching his rival when he tries to stop him from going back. Then Mark decides to resort to meanness and says that she enjoyed the nights she spent with him much more. In a calm tone, Charlie explains that only a horrible person would think that this is a reason to let her be attacked. He also says that deep down, Mark depends on him for everything and can't even get a girlfriend without having to steal his. While the two are fighting, we see that they aren't the only ones who succumb to the girl's charm. Suspended in the air, Shelley is in the monster's grip, but he doesn't seem to be in much of a hurry this time. Discreetly pulling out a knife from her pocket, she wounds the creature and escapes its grasp. Charlie is calling her name on the radio and she finally responds, asking him to hurry. Right after, her new admirer appears, but his roars suddenly cease and she notices a new sound coming down the hallway. It's the same annoying little dog, but now it's the version turbocharged by fireworks. For some reason, the fascination repeats itself and the alien just waits for the toy to come closer. Charlie and Nikki are hiding around the corner of the hallway and have to cover their ears during the explosions. Charlie moves through the smoke to Shelley and they hug. When they join Nikki and head down, we see that the creature is alive and very angry. Thus, the only hope is that they can open the door with the device and escape in time. However, the trio doesn't even reach the reception, because Mark has blocked the door with the crowbar. He seems very disturbed and refuses to listen to the desperate pleas of his friends, begging him to let them out. Fortunately, Charlie manages to force the passage and connects Bob's device, ignoring the traitor. Only Shelley expresses herself with a slap, but the overdue punishment doesn't take long. Appearing right in front of Mark, the alien grabs the guy by the shoulders and begins to savor his face. Tired of this invincible being, Charlie starts beating it with the crowbar. The alien grabs his head, and he only saves himself because Nikki activates a fire extinguisher, momentarily stunning the monster. At the first opportunity, Charlie drives the crowbar into the torso of the creature, saying he just wants to go home. The film ends the next morning, with the three discovering that returning home won't be possible, and when they finally exit from Warehouse 24, they realize that London is under full alien invasion.